Hey there! Welcome back to Red Moon Diaries. Sorry for taking so long to post, but we are back with more spine-chilling tales. So turn the lights off and let's dive right in. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and comment your favorite story in the comments down below. I should have trusted my gut when I saw the campsite was empty. It was late September, and I'd driven 4 hours into the Appalachian backcountry for what was supposed to be a peaceful solo camping trip. The ranger station had been unstaffed, just a wooden box for self-registration and a faded map behind plexiglass. I'd filled out the form, dropped my $8 into the slot, and continued up the gravel road until I found site number 7, tucked against a wall of pines. The isolation felt liberating at first. No cell service, no distant laughter from other campers, just the whisper of wind through needles and the occasional bird call. I set up my tent as the sun melted behind the ridgeline, painting everything in shades of amber and shadow. By the time I'd started my fire, full darkness had settled in like a held breath. I was heating a can of chili when I heard it, the snap of a branch somewhere beyond the firelight. I looked up, squinting into the wall of black that surrounded my small circle of warmth. Deer, probably, or a raccoon. I stirred my dinner and tried to ignore the prickling sensation crawling up my neck. The snap came again, closer this time. Hello? My voice sounded small, swallowed immediately by the forest. Nothing, just the pop and hiss of burning wood. I ate quickly, suddenly eager to be inside my tent with the zipper closed. As I scraped out the can, I heard something else. A soft, rhythmic sound. Footsteps. Not the four-legged scurry of an animal, but the deliberate crunch-crunch of boots on dry leaves. My heart kicked against my ribs. "Is someone there?" I called out, louder now, standing up. The footsteps stopped. I waited, blood rushing in my ears, every muscle tensed. 5 seconds, 10, 20. When nothing emerged from the darkness, I doused the fire, plunging myself into almost total blackness. My hands shook as I felt my way to the tent, fumbling with the zipper. Once inside, I didn't bother changing clothes, just crawled into my sleeping bag and lay there, listening. For a while there was nothing. My breathing slowly steadied. Maybe I'd imagined it. Maybe it was just the woods playing tricks on my city-trained ears. Then I heard them again. Footsteps, circling my tent. They moved slowly, deliberately, crushing leaves and snapping twigs with each step. My entire body went rigid. I held my breath, trying to hear over the thunderous pounding of my own pulse. The steps paused directly outside the tent door. Through the thin nylon, I could see a dark shape blocking the moonlight. Someone was standing there. "What do you want?" I managed to whisper, though my throat felt like it was closing. The shape didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there, breathing. I could hear it now, slow, measured breaths, like whoever it was perfectly calm. I fumbled for my phone, forgetting there was no service. My fingers closed around my knife instead, a small folding blade I'd brought for cutting rope. I clicked it open, the sound impossibly loud. The breathing stopped. Then the footsteps resumed, moving away from the tent, circling again, around and around in a slow, methodical loop. My mind raced through options. Run? Scream? Fight? But running meant leaving the tent, leaving the only barrier between me and whoever was out there. The footsteps continued for what felt like hours, but was probably only 20 minutes. Then they stopped. I lay there until my legs cramped, until the sky began to gray with dawn. Only when full daylight came did I dare unzip the tent. The campsite looked exactly as I'd left it. I circled my tent looking for footprints and found them immediately, dozens of them pressed deep into the soft earth. Boot prints, men's size 10 or 11, forming a perfect circle around where I'd slept. But that wasn't what made my blood turn to ice. At the head of my tent, pressed into the dirt, was a handprint. Palm down, fingers spread, like someone had knelt there, inches from where my head had been, and placed their hand against the ground. I packed up in under 10 minutes and drove straight home. The ranger station called 3 weeks later. They'd found the registration box pried open, all the forms stolen. They wanted to know if I'd seen anyone else at the campsite that night. When I told them what happened, there was a long pause on the line. "Site 7?" the ranger asked. "You're the third person to report that this season. We haven't caught anyone yet." I think about that sometimes, about the person who's still out there walking circles around tents in the dark, about the other campers who woke up to find those same prints in the dirt, about the ones who maybe didn't wake up at all. The woods are never as empty as they seem, and sometimes the things that watch us from the darkness are patient enough to wait until we're asleep, vulnerable, separated from civilization by miles of trees and silence. The question isn't whether someone is out there, it's whether you'll hear them in time. The air still held the crisp, almost metallic tang of pine and damp earth as we started our descent from Mount Pisgah. It was late afternoon, the sun already dipping low enough to cast long, distorted shadows of the trees across the trail. Mike, Sarah, and I had been hiking this stretch of the Black Mountains for 3 days, and our base camp, tucked into a small, relatively flat clearing near a trickling stream, felt like a distant promise of warm food and tired sleep. "Last push," Mike grunted, adjusting the straps of his pack. His voice was hoarse from the climb. Sarah, usually chatty, was quiet, her eyes fixed on the path ahead. We were all beat. We'd left our 3 tents pitched, figuring a day hike with lighter packs was better than tearing down and setting up again. Mine, a sturdy green 2-person dome, was positioned closest to the stream. Mike's bright orange one was next to it, and Sarah's small blue solo tent was nestled further back, half hidden by a thick rhododendron bush. The first hint of something wrong was the silence. Not the usual forest hum, but an absence. The chirping birds, the rustle of leaves, even the distant murmur of the stream, all seemed muted, as if the forest was holding its breath. My skin prickled. Then the clearing came into view. Mike's orange tent was there, slightly askew from where we'd left it, but otherwise intact. My green one, too, stood resolutely by the stream. But where Sarah's small blue tent should have been, tucked behind the rhododendron, there was only empty space. A small, perfectly flat patch of trampled earth. Nothing else. "No," Sarah breathed, her voice barely a whisper. She stared, her backpack suddenly slipping from her shoulder and thudding to the ground. We stood there, a trio of bewildered statues, the late afternoon sun painting the scene in surreal, elongated shadows. "It must have blown away," Mike said, though his voice lacked conviction. He dropped his pack and started walking towards the empty spot, slowly, as if approaching a crime scene. "Blown away? Into what?" I countered, gesturing at the dense wall of trees surrounding us. "It's sheltered here, and there wasn't any wind this morning." We fanned out, circling the spot. The grass and pine needles were undisturbed, beyond the small circular depression where the tent pegs had been. No drag marks, no snapped branches, no disturbed undergrowth. It was as if the tent had simply ceased to exist. "My wallet's in there," Sarah said, her voice rising in panic. "My hiking shoes, my phone, everything." She was pacing now, a frantic hummingbird. "We would have heard something," I mumbled, scanning the tree line, feeling an intense prickle of unease on my neck. "A theft? Out here? Who? And how could they have moved a tent, fully pitched, without leaving a trace? It was absurd." Mike called out, his voice tight. "Guys, look at this." He was kneeling by where Sarah's tent peg should have been. In the soft earth, directly beneath where the peg would have gone, was a perfectly formed circular indent. It wasn't the shallow, narrow hole a tent peg makes. This was wider, deeper, as if something with a rounded, blunt end had been pressed firmly into the ground. There were 5 of them, arranged in a rough circle where the tent sticks would have been. And then, the sound. A faint, almost imperceptible snap, far off in the trees, deeper than where we'd hiked. It was the sound of a small twig breaking, like a footstep.
We froze. The silence descended again, heavier than before. It wasn't empty this time. It was watching. Mike slowly stood up, his eyes darting into the shadows. Sarah was clutching her arms, trembling. My heart hammered, a frantic bird trapped in my chest. The logic of a stolen tent was terrifying enough, but the absence of evidence, the strange indentations, and that single, far-off snap, it felt less like a crime and more like a carefully orchestrated vanishing act. We spent the rest of the evening huddled around a frantic fire, our backs to the impenetrable darkness, taking turns trying to sleep in Mike's 2-person tent. Sarah wept quietly, less for her lost belongings and more for the chilling implication of their disappearance. We left at first light, practically running. The ranger station just shook their heads. "Things go missing in the woods," they said. "Critters, maybe a hungry bear." But they didn't see the perfect circle of disturbed earth, didn't hear the precise snap in the distance, didn't feel the terrifying weight of that impossible, empty space.
I found it by accident. We'd been camping at Clearwater Lake for 3 days. Me, my brother Jake, and our childhood friend Marcus. The kind of trip we'd been talking about doing for years, back when life was simpler and we actually had time for each other. The campsite was perfect, right on the water, far enough from other campers that we could be loud without bothering anyone. On our 3rd afternoon, I decided to explore the trail that wound up the hillside behind our site. Jake and Marcus were fishing, arguing good-naturedly about something I'd stopped listening to. I needed a break from the constant conversation, just 20 minutes alone with my thoughts. The trail was overgrown, barely used. I had to push through branches that clawed at my shirt, stepping over fallen logs thick with moss. About a 1/4 mile up, I stopped to catch my breath and noticed something odd, a structure that didn't quite fit with the trees around it. It was a hunting blind, camouflage netting stretched over a wooden frame tucked into a dense cluster of pines, the kind bow hunters use during deer season. But something about it felt wrong. The position, maybe. It wasn't facing any clearing or game trail. It was angled downward toward the lake.
Toward our campsite. My curiosity overrode my unease. I pushed aside the netting and climbed inside. The smell hit me first, stale sweat and rotting food. A sleeping bag lay crumpled in one corner, dark stains I didn't want to examine too closely. An empty bag of beef jerky, a water bottle, still half full. And on a small wooden shelf someone had built into the frame. Binoculars, expensive ones, Zeiss, high-powered. I picked them up, looked through them, and my blood turned to ice. I could see everything. Our campsite was perfectly framed in the lenses. The tent, the fire pit, the cooler, the 2 folding chairs. I could see Jake's blue jacket hanging from a tree branch, could see Marcus's fishing rod propped against a log. Someone had been watching us from up here, close enough to see every detail. My hands started shaking. I set the binoculars down, and that's when I saw the notebook. It was a small spiral-bound thing, the kind you'd buy at a gas station. The cover was water-stained and warped. I opened it, and my stomach dropped. The first page was dated 4 days ago, the day before we'd arrived. Site 7 occupied, family of 4, 2 adults, 2 kids, Midwest plates, staying 3 nights. I flipped forward. The handwriting was cramped, obsessive. Site 7 clear. New arrivals expected Friday. Friday. That was us. My throat constricted as I turned to the next entry. 3 males, early 30s, blue Tacoma, Colorado plates. Set up camp, 4:47 p.m. Tall one, red shirt, is the leader. Sets up tent, gives orders. Asian guy, glasses, does the cooking. Younger one, tattoo sleeve, follows along.
Red shirt. That was me. I'd worn my red Patagonia hoodie the first day. The next page made me feel sick. Day 2, up at 7:15 a.m. Red shirt goes for a run, 22 minutes. Returns, drinks coffee from blue mug. Asian guy makes breakfast. Eggs, bacon. They're relaxed, don't check surroundings. Tattoo guy takes a piss behind the big pine at 8:40 a.m. Doesn't look around first. Every detail, every moment. Someone had been up here, watching us through those binoculars, documenting our every move like we were specimens in a lab. I flipped through more pages, my heart hammering so hard I could hear it in my ears. Night 2, arguing about something at dinner. Red shirt gets loud, Asian guy plays peacemaker. They drink beer until 11:30 p.m. Tattoo guy passes out first in the tent, others follow by midnight. Tent zipper doesn't lock properly. Notice this first night. The tent zipper doesn't lock properly. They knew. They'd been close enough to check. The last entry was from this morning. Day 3. Red shirt went up the hill trail at 2:17 p.m. alone. That was 10 minutes ago. They knew I was here. I dropped the notebook like it had burned me. My eyes darted around the blind, suddenly seeing everything differently. The way the netting created a dark cave, the smell of someone who'd spent days in here, the sleeping bag that meant they'd stayed overnight. Were they here now? Watching me from somewhere in the trees? I grabbed the notebook, evidence, I thought frantically, and scrambled out of the blind, nearly falling as my feet hit the ground. Branches whipped my face as I crashed back down the trail, not caring about the noise, just needing to get back to Jake and Marcus, back to people, back to witnesses. "We need to leave," I shouted as I burst into the campsite. They looked up from their beers, startled. Marcus laughed. "Dude, what? Now! We're leaving now!" I was throwing things into bags, my hand shaking so badly I could barely grip the tent poles. "What the hell happened?" Jake grabbed my shoulder, forced me to look at him. I showed them the notebook, watched the color drain from their faces as they read. Marcus kept saying, "What the fuck?" over and over, quieter each time. We packed in 12 minutes, threw everything in the truck bed, didn't care what we left behind. As Jake started the engine, I looked back at the hillside. Through the trees, I could just barely see it, a small flash of camouflage netting, and something else. A shape, darker than the shadows around it, standing next to the blind. Standing perfectly still, watching us leave. We filed a police report when we got back to town. They found the blind 2 days later, exactly where I'd described it. The binoculars were still there, the sleeping bag, the garbage, but the notebook was gone. The officer who called said they'd found something else though, more notebooks, buried in a shallow hole beneath the blind. 12 of them, dating back 3 years, different campsites, different people, all documented with the same obsessive detail. Were there... I couldn't finish the question. "No bodies," the officer said. "No evidence of physical harm, but..." He paused. "Some of the names in those notebooks, we're trying to track them down. See if they remember anything unusual about their trips." I think about that sometimes, about what would have happened if we'd stayed another night, if I hadn't gone up that trail, if the zipper on our tent had failed while we slept, about whether the person in that blind was content just to watch, or if they were working up to something more. The woods are full of places to hide, and the things that watch from them don't always announce themselves. Sometimes they just take notes, learning your patterns, your vulnerabilities, your routines, and you never know you were being studied until you find the evidence, if you're lucky enough to find it at all. Thanks for watching up to the end of the video. Oh, don't forget to like and subscribe for more spooky stories.